Hey, welcome to our God's Love for the Unlovable and Gospel Rant series called Vagabond Diaries. We're telling the eternal gospel, the good news about God's innate love for the unlovable, the unloved, and the unlovely. And we're using story format, tales, fantasies, mock trials, things like that. You'll see what we're talking about. It's a lot of fun. This is perhaps the longest and hardest Vagabond Diary I've created to date, and I hope it's going to lead to a great deal of discussion and soul searching. Boy, I'd love to get feedback. All right, let's get right into it. In today's Vagabond Diary, we meet intransient and angry Hank as he faces his final judge, Jesus. Welcome to God's Love for the Unlovable and Gospel Rant. So the setting is Hank stands before the grand final judicial bench. It's not how he imagined, even in his younger days when he actually believed in heaven and God. It looks far more like a garden than a musty old human courtroom. He had stepped, and I suppose that's the right word to use, into this vibrant garden, a lush sanctuary brimming with color and life. It's an enlivened tapestry of flowers, all in full bloom. Their colors ranging from the soft pastels of the peonies and roses to the vivid hues of dahlias and marigolds. Tall sunflowers sway gently in the breeze, their golden faces turned towards the sun, of course. The air was as clear and sweet as he could ever remember. Lavender and rosemary bushes add a soothing aroma, blending with the sweet scent of jasmine and honeysuckle that climb gracefully over the trellises and arbors. To his right is a crystal clear pond, its surface shimmering under the sunlight. Lily pads float serenely on the water, and delicate whitewater lilies bloom from their pads. Tiny fish dart playfully beneath the surface, and the gentle sound of a small tiered fountain adds a calming melodic trickle to the ambiance. Immediately in front of Hank stands a small, whimsical gazebo draped in wisteria and adorned with hanging lanterns. Here a few colorful finches flit about, their cheerful songs blending with the gentle hum of bees busy at work. Jesus calmly sits there, his focus entirely on Hank. He does not wear intimidating dark robes, just a fresh tunic. A thin purple stripe adorns its edge, comfortable sandals. Hank notices that he appears far more Middle Eastern than he had imagined. Hank sits alone on one of the comfortable garden benches tucked into a shady alcove surrounded by a vast crowd of women and men of a variety of skin colors, shapes, and sizes, but also there are winged creatures, many of them, some quite large, scattered among them. It's obvious that they are here to witness this event, this dialogue between Jesus and Hank. Curious, he thought. The last thing he could remember was turning his car into that oncoming 18-wheeler on that remote Texas road. He recalls the flashing lights, the honking horn, the massive crashing sound, and now to his shock, is he dead? Is he in shock? Is this real? Is any of it real? Well, if the truth were known, whether alive or dead, Hank is more than a bit surprised that he's here. Particularly in his last couple of decades, he had been very public about the fact that he did not believe that there was a God. He was the voice of reason against foolish religion. He spent a great deal of time and energy mocking Christ and his followers. He once wrote in a blog that no one noticed, quote, "Christians have no evidence, no proof that there ever was a God, much less so the bloody, gory, abusive, and inconsistent God presented in the Bible. The Bible is only stories and badly edited ones constructed and used for very human political purposes to oppress certain people groups like blacks and women. It's a con, and Jesus is the biggest con of them all," close quote. And yet, here he is, sitting in front of that formerly fictional character, Jesus. His head is spinning, and perhaps it's just reactionary, but the more he thinks about it, he sees no reason to suck up to Jesus. I mean, not now, whether he's real or not. The narrative picks up after a very awkward and silent first couple of minutes. The audience has seen many of these so-called trials. Expectation is high because they have come to see the power of the love of Jesus, even for those who were as hard and stiff-necked as Hank before he came. The judge, Jesus, is quite engaged and warmly interested in Hank. It's obvious. Here's Jesus. Hank, can I ask you a question? Hank, sounding arrogant and irreverent. Absolutely, why not? It's your crib, boss. Jesus, you lived your life, most of it anyway, pretty sure that I don't exist and that it was all a scam, some way of keeping the impoverished masses down, a way to make money for certain religious elites. Now, I will not gaslight you by saying that didn't occur wrongly in my name and often, but here I am. That you can see with your own eyes. You are free to come and put your fingers in my scar to make sure that I'm real. And please do. I am here to have a two-way dialogue. My hope is that afterwards you will not only accept me for who I am, but will love me and be loved by me. Hank, you said you had a question? I only heard a Sunday school speech. Jesus, yes, well said. Will you receive my love for you? That's my hope, Hank. Heaven would be a very awkward place if you didn't love me. That is, you would feel pretty much an odd man out, so to speak. So think carefully. We have a lot of time. Assuming that I can answer all of your questions, then will you love me and be loved by me? Hank, I don't want to speculate about my emotions at this point. It seems to me to be an avoidance tactic. This is a court of law, yeah? A strange one to be sure. Here we want the indifferent truth. But I will ask this, how can anyone love apart from truth? Jesus. Yes, but before we proceed with your examination of the truth, may I ask one more question? What kind of love is it that loves on the basis of a series of questions and answers? Is this what you really desire for eternity, that kind of love? Hank, I do not know what you mean by such a love. Truth first, then who knows? You're confusing matters and avoiding my questions. Jesus, a bit, you're correct. But in this court, since I am the judge after all, I am most interested in your endgame here. Are you trying to remove all issues that are preventing you from being loved by me? That it obstruct you somehow from adoring me as I am, worshiping me as I am, and submitting to me as your Lord? Hank, shaking his head with a mocking chuckle. Right. See, actually, setting love aside for now, my end game is to get truth, sir. I need facts, solid evidence that you are God and the only God. I want legally verifiable evidence. Then, Jesus, well, then what? Said Jesus calmly, clearly feeling a deep love for this arrogant and stubborn man. Hank, well, first of all, since you won't stop pressing me, I really don't think you will answer my questions to my satisfaction at all. In fact, I don't think you have any real answers. I suspect that this whole thing is a huge cover-up. All you've ever done is abuse people, victimize them for your glory. Jesus, I am more than happy to answer your questions, Hank. Whether my answers suit your purpose or ultimately serve to satisfy you, I cannot say. It would seem that you are hardly an objective barrister. You stand before me with your mind made up that I'm not authentic, honest, or even good. You do not accept that you are actually the defendant here in my presence. Rather, you have taken on the role of accuser and are publicly charging me with the abuse of my creation. Am I correct in this observation? Hank, sarcastically, well, Jesus, you being God and all, you tell me what I'm thinking. You know what's in my heart, don't you? That's what you've claimed, isn't it? So, You tell me what I'm thinking. Jesus, very well, I will grant your request. What is in your heart? Well, you are very angry with your lot in life. You've experienced great suffering and loss, particularly for your young son's ultimately death from SIDS. At one point in time, you were mainly angry with me, but now you are just angry at everything. You're even angry with yourself for believing in me at one time, your wife for leaving you. Then there is the horrible event that brought you here before me. Should I continue? Hank, stop. Just stop. Judge Jesus. Where's all this headed? Is the point that all of this is my fault? Jesus. Hank, may I be direct? You have been deeply hurt by so many people and events, and that is not your fault at all. And yet, you have chosen to live in a cowardly, self-protective, black and white paradigm of fault-finding. Who's to blame? Who's right? Who's wrong? You did not get that paradigm from me. And there is a much bigger issue. You cannot receive love anyone's. I've looked deep in your heart. You harbor absolutely no love for others or for me. You feel resentment, anger, rage, and bitterness, but you do not love me or anyone else for that matter. Be honest for one moment, Hank. Can you love? Can you be loved? Hank, sarcastically. So, Your Highness, since this is your court and your game, let's go down that path. Answer me this. Why in the world would I ever love you? You abandoned me in my time of need. You didn't come to my aid. You didn't answer my prayers, even back when I was foolish enough to think that it was a good idea to come to you. You were nowhere to be found. What in the world is lovable about you? On the contrary, you just take from helpless, ignorant people and give them nothing. You preach hope, but in the end it's nothing but lies. You're no worse than a child abuser. I do not love you. I don't even like you. You have done nothing to deserve my love, and I refuse to even try. Jesus, honesty at last. You have attempted to turn the tables here in my courtroom. Now you are the judge and I am the defendant. What is your accusation against me? Speak. You have my permission. I now sit in the defendant's dock. Hank, it's my plan to expose you to all of these witnesses as a fraud and scam artist, to reveal you as the greatest abuser since Jack the Ripper. It's time that you stood and answered for failing on all of your claims and promises. You stood by during the Holocaust. Worse than that, if you are the God you say you are, you even sovereignly appointed Hitler and empowered him in his task. Do you have a defense, O King of Kings? You stood by while millions upon millions starved in the Sudan. You did nothing, O God, to stop those who died in the tsunami, COVID, 9/11, or AIDS. You are a pitiful, laughable no-show. You want all the praise, all the glory, but you stood by, not wanting to dirty your holy hands. You are worse than all of those mindless puppets you call priests. Can't you see? Oh, all-seeing one! You have done nothing to stop the murderous hypocrisy done at the hands of your people. Where were you during the Crusades? Or worse, how do you defend initiating them? Your crusades to free the Holy Land murdered thousands upon thousands of innocents. The murderers bribed to get a free ticket into this garden. Where were you as your missionaries were kidnapping children from their parents to brainwash them to be your followers? That's what you have to do to get people to follow you, isn't it? Where were you when hundreds of priests were molesting child after child in your name? What defense can you possibly give? You are the guilty one here. You are the one who needs a savior. Who's going to pay for all of your crimes? Hank paused for theatric effect. No defense then? Guilty of all charges. Verdict, death. Trial over. I'm done here. Jesus. Oh, impressive display, Hank. Your end game is clear at last. Are you done? Hank. Am I done? No, not exactly. So, since you have no defense, then you must admit that you are a fraud and a scam. Step down from your lofty throne, bow to me, Savior, and apologize for all of your lies. Jesus, I feel only rage in you, Hank. You have been through much. And by the way, I do not defend the actions of my followers, hardly. In fact, I paid a dear price for their unrighteous choices. I paid the price of my life. And further, I am committed to paying all of their victims back for all of the crimes, every single one of them, to each of their wildest satisfaction. And many are here today and can bear witness of that blessing and mercy. As God, I have such a power. It's finished. Is that enough for you? You remind me a little of my servant Job. Oh yeah, there really was a Job. The book of Job, of course, has been highly edited by brilliant poets, but the basic story is very real. There really was a Job. And like you, he was very angry and frustrated at me. And like you, he felt betrayed and abandoned by me. And Job made an even better case against me, Hank, but there is one major difference between you and Job. He really loved me. And see, that was his biggest conundrum. I mean, granted, in some ways, his great love for me fueled his sense of being betrayed. It caused him more pain. I understand what betrayal feels like, Judas kisses and the like. I too have felt the blinding rage of betrayal and abandonment. Well, in his anger, Job also publicly challenged me for an explanation. And like you, he wanted to have me questioned, to answer for my absence. The joke, of course, was that I wasn't absent, not at all, but he could not see what was going on in the invisible realm. In fact, humans just don't have that capacity. Hank, you can only see the physical, and even then your perspective is so narrow and small and lacking. I mean, innately you are quite ignorant. Even the most well-schooled among you have seen so little of the celestials. Anyway, Job demanded that I answer for the way I was treating him. But if you read the story, you know now that I could not intervene and explain what was going down without trashing the sting. We had to play it through. I knew Job. He was up for the assignment, and in the end, it was his choice to withdraw his case against me and to set aside his demand for an explanation, not forever, but until a later time. Such trust and submission and love in the shadow of darkness, all of that requires a deeper love and a heaven-born faith. So Job knew, in spite of all of the apparent injustices, how much I loved him. Hank, fundamentally, you do not. Yet, I am still prepared to extend such a power to you that would begin to give you access to my love for you. Hank, there you go again, talking about love, all the while avoiding answering the questions. Evidence, evidence, evidence. Jesus sighing, Hank, don't let your anger conquer you, not at this critical time. Hank, obvious mocking tone. Is that all you got, Jesus? Jesus, in the case of Job, I had designed a celestial sting that brought my servant Job into a heroic, starring role to crush Satan's head. Oh yes, there is an accuser named Satan, Hank. In your arrogance, you truly know very little of what goes on around you. Your perspective is so limited, and that is why I took the line of questioning that I did with Job. Where were you when I laid the earth's foundations? Tell me if you understand. Who marked off its dimensions? Surely you know. Who stretched a measuring line across it? On what were its footings set? And who laid its cornerstone? While the morning stars sang together and all the angels shouted for joy. Who shut up the sea behind doors when it burst forth from the womb? When I made the clouds its garment and wrapped it in thick darkness, when I fixed limits for it and set its doors and bars in place, when I said, this far you may go and no farther, here is where your proud waves halt. Have you ever given orders to the morning or shown the dawn its place, that it might take the earth by the edges and shake the wicked out of it. I didn't say it harshly because I love Job with all the love in the universe. I still do. He's here today. Would you like to speak to him? I wanted him to see how difficult his questions were. Not that I couldn't answer them. It's just that he didn't have the capacity to comprehend my answer. See, even the greatest of quantum physics scholars would not follow my explanation one bit. And of course, as it turned out, he knew little about how to create something out of nothing. Hank, you're well read, but my guess is that you're about as ignorant about how to create something out of nothing as he was. Am I right? In order to bait the lure, I tricked Satan and gave him the power to crush Job and to murder his wonderful family, who I also adore. Harsh, painful stuff. On the surface, which is as deep as you can envision, it would seem that I'm nefarious and just indifferent to the pain of others. But just the opposite. Hank, you are clearly not as smart as you would like to think. I intentionally designed the entire series of events to bring unbelievable glory to the name of Job and his family. Who today does not know the name of Job and what he did? The accuser is still licking his bruises. And by the way, I ultimately knew that Job would rise up and outwit Satan. And he did. He did exactly what a real child of mine who loves me should do. In the process, he also acted like a true son of mine. He came to me to be vindicated. He demanded answers from me. He demanded an explanation. He wanted to know what charges I had against him that I would cause such bad things to happen to him and his family. But as I said, the opposite was true. In fact, I chose Job not because he was guilty of anything, but because he was righteous. It was his righteousness. It was his love for me that were critical to the success of this celestial sting. Your world, Hank, is so tiny, so inglorious. But as you look through your minuscule keyhole, be aware of just how little you can truly see. You have no place in your so-called evidence-supported reality for a sovereign good God, or a very capable deceiver, Satan. You argue against the value and realities of delayed justice, but delayed justice is all around you. But that is the only justice your human justice system knows. You have no place for Job's experience where such suffering and loss are wonderfully purposeful and redemptive. His suffering did not happen for no reason at all. Just the opposite. The end was great glory for him, his family, his friends, and for so many others. In your blind arrogance, Hank, you are such an easy target for deception. Your anger and charges brought before this court are unwarranted. Hank, so you're justifying the death of an entire innocent family because it served in your petty battle against a pathetic mythological walking snake? Seriously? How insensitive can you be? Aren't you supposed to protect the people who bow to you? Aren't you supposed to reward their love with blessings? Oh no, not you. You use them to fight your battles. What kind of God are you? Why not just give them glory and avoid all the injustice and pain? Why would anyone ever follow you? Jesus. And yet they do. Billions of people from every people group on the planet, including Job and his family, many people much smarter than you, many who do not have the benefit of your education. To draw Satan out of hiding and be exposed to humanity took some real strategy. Job's family played an important role, not a role that they had dreamed of. Their role was quite passive. And true, I did not ask for their permission. That does not lessen their role or honor that they would earn through their participation. But here's something that you choose to overlook as a possibility. They lost their lives, but in return gained so much more than they ever lost. And you can ask them. They will tell you that they are still very honored to have played their part, even such a tragic part. And by the way, they're more than blessed. They may have lost 30 or more years of physical life on the earth, but once you've come to heaven, those 30 years don't look so appealing. Something else that you cannot see, Hank, and I cannot prove to you, not to your satisfaction. Some things, for instance, the future, cannot be submitted to any human court with scientific verifiability. Your request is absurd on its face. What possible proof could be given beyond the testimony of the God that you deny? It is an adolescent self-defeating gambit. But nevertheless, even though the great Hank has not been convinced, that does not make it any less true. Let's say that I could give you 15 minutes right now to chat with Job and his family, and would you accept their testimony that their battle, as painful as it was not only worth it in hindsight, but if they were actually given a choice, they would choose that path again in a heartbeat? Hank: not interested, muttered Hank, just shaking his head. What good would come from chatting to innies in the cult? Anything they would say would only be subjective hearsay. Anyway, they have been drinking your Kool-Aid for a couple of thousand years now. Their testimony is not relevant. I need real proof. Jesus: ah, yes, of course, real proof. I could give the very same speech that I gave to Job years ago. The speech is often wrongly expounded as my shutting him down, frightening him with a raised voice. That didn't happen. I loved Job then and still today. He was in the very middle of one of the greatest things that I ever produced and directed. Satan never saw it coming. If you had read my entire book with some discernment, you will already know that I have designed many settings where my men and women of faith pick up where Adam and Eve failed and successfully crushed the head of the serpent. And you can call them to the dock and interrogate them as well. That's the whole point of the book, Hank. I promised in the beginning that humanity will be victorious over Satan. No other sting has been greater than Job's. Victory for Job would only come if he trusted his lot in my hands. Like you, Hank, he had no ability to imagine the celestial realm. Like you, Hank, he could not see that the greatest of all blessings is the starring role in the desperate battle against Satan, where he felt very much alone. I wasn't withholding blessings. I was wildly blessing him, though the immediate pain was, from all human appearances, unjust. This is hard to see with human eyes or to understand by human reason, particularly in the dark shadow of great loss. You asked about the Holocaust, the Crusades, human trafficking, COVID, or AIDS, or other tragic dark aspects of human history. You cannot imagine how such disasters could lead to even greater life and glory for many, but I can. You have no spiritual imagination, Hank, only anger. Look around you at those who sat in your seat before you. Each ended up with unanswered questions, and yet each truly desired to feel loved by me. In one sense, you're in good company, Hank. Job had no human ability to imagine such things either. How can good blessings come from the loss of his family, his reputation, his health and wealth? I can give an answer to that. Can you, Hank? Of course not. In your world, there is no ultimate justice or consolation. I mean, no wonder you're angry. The legal system that you have invested your life in is ultimately impotent. It has betrayed you. It can't offer any real justice for victims. I do. So I asked Job a series of simple questions. At least they were simple for me to answer, to remind him that his best and only hope was to trust me and my plan. He did. To his credit, he didn't forget his questions. He only tabled them. Job was then and still is a great man of great courage and conviction. He loved me well, and in return was showered with honor and glory afforded to very few of Adam's seed. He was righteous. Hank, you lack that. Hank, you've given no answer to the charges of evil and abuse. Jesus, clearly not to your satisfaction anyway. I have answered your questions. If the truth were known, you just don't like my answers. Let me ask you one last question. Why would you ever want to spend eternity with me anyway? Why wouldn't you prefer to be anywhere else? Hank, I could think of no worse fate than to be sucking up to you and witnessing your ignorant followers embarrassingly dote over you for one day, much less thousands of years. Jesus, even if the alternative is ugly, painful, and horrific? Hank, anything would be better than to kiss your ass for eternity. Jesus, What if I could send my spirit to your spirit to empower you to receive my love for you as you are? I could also give you love for me. Love is a fruit of my spirit, not yours. And then we could spend eternity doing question and answers together. We could have a great time. I promise that all of your questions have answers. I love your sense of humor, your great laugh. My Father has given you a remarkable interest in logic and questions. What I could tell you and show you will wow you and lead to many more questions. In fact, much better and more interesting questions than you've brought here today. But the conversation could take a while, likely a whole eternity. Hank, why would I think that it is a good thing for you to step all over my free will? What good could come out of such alien reprogramming? Is that how you get people to follow you? That's pathetic. I would rather be anywhere than where you will be. Jesus, you speak of free will as if you actually knew what free will was. Humanity has not known free will since the garden. Such dribble was philosophically introduced by Zoroaster and made virtually universal in the West by the Enlightenment humanist. Simply put, Hank, your vaunted ability to supposedly calculate what is in your singular best self-interest is hardly disinterested or objective. Deep inside you is a roiling, organic network of compulsive beliefs, behaviors, and thoughts that issue out of your basic alienation from God. Your anger, your unforgiveness, your unresolved past issues, your unwillingness to believe in me dramatically shape your view of the world and dramatically shape all of your decisions. Your will is hardly free. I offer you such freedom, but you will have none of it. Hank, you sit there on your vaulted throne and judge me? What about all of the injustices that you've done to humanity? You will never have to answer for any of it. Why don't you submit to your own justice, you hypocrite? Jesus, I call as my next witness your son, Bobby. I know your heart, Hank. You have never, ever dealt with Bobby's death by SIDS. You blame me. You hate me for not saving him. I understand, Hank. There is no greater injustice than when a son dies for no reason at all. A young man walks up to the seat to the right of the judge. He is a handsome, joyful man. It appears that he's in his early 20s. In many ways, he looks the spitting image of his father. Hank, filled with rage now. How dare you? Look, I don't know what you're trying to pull off here. I don't know that person. My son died years ago. He's gone. He is no more. Bobby, Daddy, it's me, Bobby. I've been waiting for you and Mom. I'm okay. No kidding. I don't blame anyone. Life has been really good to me. Look at me. Can you believe it? Hank, staring towards Jesus with hardened eyes, totally avoiding looking at Bobby. How dare you? You will use my child, if he is my child, against me? Even worse, you brainwash him to be one of your ass kissers? You are worse than even I thought. Jesus, no one is against you, Hank. You charge me with injustice, so let's consider the untimely death of your infant son. What is the crime that you claim that I have committed? I ordained the death of Bobby, granted, but I have given him so much more than he could have ever had on earth. Ask him. He harbors no grudges. He makes no charge against me, none at all. He's whole, healthy, and well. In fact, he's grateful. I blessed him. All of his desires have been fully granted. He has avoided so much of the pain and anguish of living on earth. More than that, his death initiated a path to life for 25 people, many who are in this room today that you have no idea of. Hank, I could care less about those other people. You admit that you killed my son. You're a murderer and you must answer for it. Jesus, Hank, the death was momentary, shorter than a nanosecond. I actually gave him a greater life in existence, more life than you could have given him. Does it mean anything to you that his death, though painful and tragic for you and your wife, led to life and purpose for many? Hank, how dare you? It was not your right to take him. He was our child, you petty deity, mine. It doesn't matter if his life was beneficial to anyone else. That was not your decision. Jesus, So ask your son then if he thinks that his untimely death was just and beyond that purposeful. Hank, so the ends justify the means? Jesus, such a pathetic catch-all phrase. Hank, I ordain both the means and the ends to accomplish the highest good for all. That's what I do. Have you nothing to say to your son Bobby? Hank, I don't know that man. So, you justify crimes against humanity arguing they lead to a higher good for others? You dare to justify the Holocaust? Explain the higher good to me. Jesus, I could, but since you cannot see the higher good in the case of a single incident, how could you ever comprehend something far more complex? But if you look around this room, you will notice that there are millions of Holocaust victims here. I have taken great care of them. Would you like to hear of their joy here? Hank, what about all of the good people who worshiped other gods? What do you say to them? Jesus, you're free to speak to many of those people that you report to stand up for. Look all around you, Hank. There is no one here who was born loving me. Everyone has pursued other idols and gods, every one of these. There are people, even in this courtroom, who were trapped in just about every deceptive counterfeit religion and philosophy known to humanity before I set them free. And humanity has been infinitely creative, looking for love, worth, purpose, power, intimacy, identity in all the wrong places. So your charge is just not authentic, is it, Hank? Your illegitimate concern for the well-being of others is just a sheer veneer, only you being argumentative. You do not have such a case. You have heard of me from numerous sources and numerous people. Your personal defense is non-existent. Hank, I have had enough of this charade. Am I done? Jesus, not quite yet. I have committed to all humanity that I will bring consolation to them. It's my pleasure and joy to make you whole for all of the injustices that have ever been committed against you. I will first make you whole. Hank, and if I don't want anything from your filthy hand, Jesus, it makes no difference, Hank. This is a glory that I gladly force down your throat. I wish you were more open to such a gift, but alas, you are stubborn and afraid. Receive consolation, do you? There's a pause in the proceeding. Hank closes his eyes and bends over slightly. Some kind of power surges through him. A single tear issues from his left eye. He takes a loud breath, inhales, and then exhales. Jesus, Hank, I've done what I promised. I have paid you back for all the crimes that have been ever committed against you, many that you were not even aware of. Your heart now knows that many of the crimes that you thought were crimes were actually not. You now see that as well. So now, will you take me up on my other offer? Can I give you my spirit so that you will indeed love me and feel loved by me for eternity? Hank, I hate you, you child murderer. Even if you give me love, I will find a way to hate you for all eternity if I have to. I want no part of you or anything that comes from you. Your parlor tricks are not impressive to me. There still has been no real justice for the crimes in my life. You only made me feel justice. You just made me feel as if there had been justice. Well, what is that? That's not real justice. There is no real justice, just tricks. I might as well just snort a U-Haul full of Coke. That would make me feel good too. I want out. Jesus. So be it. Your testimony against yourself is what it is. Your desire is now granted to you. He slams the gavel. Next case. The end. So if you like this Vagabond Diary or were energized by it, if it led to dialogue and new interest in the evangelism and the defense of the gospel, please like this and subscribe it and forward the link to a friend, a Bible college prof, or a pastor. And by the way, personal favor asked, check out my fantasy books, the Kingdom Quest trilogy, The Tale of the Unlikely Prince, The Storyteller's Tale, and The Garden Tale are out now, available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and Kindle. Fourth will be out, so it won't be a trilogy anymore. If you want more information, drbillsenior.com. I think this is how we're going to reach our teens now. I think. I've also published a series for women's group, Dance Daughters of the Most High. You can find out more information about that Bible study discussion book, drbillsenior.com. Hey, listen, this was a long one. I hope to see you back at a future Vagabond Diary. We'll see you next time. Take heart, child of God.